Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to take a look at leadership, specifically in Bulgaria. We've got this really fascinating survey. It was done by Act 2 Manage in partnership with the American Chamber of Commerce.
Oh, wow.
It's called
Interesting.
Deliberate Leadership Survey, Bulgaria, 2023-2024. And it really dives into the practices of managers, specifically in medium and large international companies.
Yeah. So it's giving us like a focused look at a particular segment of the Bulgarian business sector.
Exactly.
Not like the whole picture.
Not the whole picture.
Yeah.
But I think still a very interesting segment to look at.
Absolutely.
So this deep dive is going to unpack what this survey reveals about the strengths and weaknesses of Bulgarian leaders, as measured by this framework called deliberate leadership.
Right. So it's not just any leadership.
Right.
It's this particular approach that they're using as a lens to assess management effectiveness.
That sounds intriguing. What exactly does deliberate leadership entail?
So essentially it breaks down leadership competencies into three categories: personal, interpersonal, and action. So it really covers, the whole spectrum of what we think about when we say what makes a manager effective. From like individual goal setting all the way to team development, sort of everything in between. So it's a pretty holistic framework.
Okay. So you've had a chance to dig into the data.
Yeah.
What stood out to you? What were some of the things that you found either surprising or interesting or...
Well, the thing that really jumped out at me initially was just this. Bulgarian managers seem to excel when it comes to like their own productivity and their adherence to company values. Like they're really good at hitting their targets, following the rules. But then the numbers drop significantly when we look at how they engage with their teams.
Okay. Can you give us some specific examples of that contrast?
Yeah, absolutely. So for instance, 58% of managers strongly agreed that they shared all non-confidential information with their teams.
Yeah.
And 55% said they consistently acted in accordance with company values. So you can see, like, they're really on top of things.
They're walking the walk.
Yeah, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. But then when you look at things like only 37% reported holding regular one-on-one meetings with their direct reports, and only 27% strongly agreed that they set clear expectations and measurable goals for individual team members.
That's a huge difference.
Yeah, it's a pretty big gap.
It really is.
It makes you wonder, what's behind that? Like, what is it about that contrast between individual effectiveness and then team engagement?
It's almost as if, like, they've got a really good grasp of the theoretical aspect of leadership. But when it comes to practical application, especially with people, it seems like there's a disconnect.
It does. And it raises some interesting questions about, the state of leadership development in Bulgaria. Like if managers are excelling at personal goal setting, representing company values, why aren't those same strengths translating into how they lead their teams?
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I think this is a problem that goes beyond Bulgaria.
Absolutely.
Like we see this, I think they call it the knowing-doing gap.
The knowing-doing gap.
In leadership development all over the world.
All over the world.
But this survey really highlights that disconnect.
It does.
In a very striking way.
Yeah. And it kind of gives us a very specific example to look at, to really think about, what are the factors that contribute to that?
So we've established this potential gap between, individual excellence and then team leadership in Bulgarian managers. Let's look at some of the more surprising findings from the survey. And one that really stood out to me was the data on hybrid work.
Oh, that's a good one.
Because it is a bit counterintuitive. So you would think that, being in the office more would lead to better engagement, better teamwork. But the survey actually found that leaders working in a hybrid format displayed more of these deliberate leadership behaviors than those working fully in the office or fully remotely.
That's right, which is really, it kind of goes against what a lot of people have been saying, as we've transitioned to more hybrid and remote work.
Yeah.
But this data suggests that maybe there's something about that hybrid model that actually forces managers to be more intentional about how they connect with their teams.
Yeah, because when you're not seeing your team every day, you have to make time to schedule those one-on-ones to make sure everybody is literally on the same page.
Right.
And maybe that creates a stronger focus on those interpersonal leadership skills.
Yeah. Maybe it forces you to prioritize those things in a way that you don't when you're just kind of like bumping into people in the hallway.
Right. It's fascinating. And it actually ties in with another key finding from the survey, which is the importance of feeling valued.
That's right. That was a big one.
So tell me about that.
Yeah, so the data showed a really strong correlation between feeling valued at work and applying those deliberate leadership practices that we were just talking about. So leaders who strongly agree with the statement, I feel valued at work, were significantly more likely to engage in those positive behaviors like regular feedback and individual goal setting. So feeling valued seems to have a ripple effect on how you lead others.
Are we saying then that a manager who feels valued by their company is then more likely to value their team members?
That's the question, isn't it? It's a really interesting one. Like, could a manager's sense of being valued by their own superiors actually influence how they, in turn, value and develop their team members? And if so, what are the implications for how companies think about creating a culture of appreciation and recognition at all levels of leadership? That's something we really need to explore further.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, do you think there's a link between this hybrid work finding and this emphasis on feeling valued?
Oh, interesting. Tell me more.
Could it be that those leaders who are thriving in a hybrid environment also happen to be the ones who feel more valued by their companies?
I see what you're saying.
Maybe the flexibility, the autonomy that comes with hybrid work contributes to that sense of value, which then translates into, more deliberate, more effective leadership. It'll be interesting to see if further research can be done on that potential connection.
Yeah. I mean, this survey, it gives us all this really interesting data that just prompts further exploration. Like, it makes us kind of reconsider, some of the assumptions that we have about leadership development and what really drives those effective leadership behaviors. So it's a great starting point for a lot more research and a lot more conversation.
And it raises, I think, some crucial questions for companies, thinking about, how they can support their leaders to bridge that knowing-doing gap and create a work environment that's more thriving, more productive for everyone. But before we get into potential solutions, I want to look at a few more of the intriguing findings from this Bulgarian leadership survey. And one that I found really surprising was
the finding about leading by example.
Oh, yeah.
It's something you hear all the time, in leadership circles.
It's like be the change.
Yeah, be the change you want to see.
Role model, all that stuff.
Exactly.
But this survey actually found a very low correlation between a manager's leadership behavior and that of their direct supervisor.
That is interesting. You'd think you would model your leadership style after.
Yeah, you'd think so, right?
After your boss.
Yeah, and it definitely challenges that assumption.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, what other factors are at play here.
Right.
Shaping
everything going on.
Leadership behavior in the workplace.
Yeah.
If it's not simply a matter of, monkey see, monkey do.
Right.
Is it more about the company culture?
Could be.
Individual personality traits?
Yeah.
Maybe it's the specific demands of their role within an organization.
It's really fascinating, and I think it kind of brings us back to, if simply observing good leadership isn't enough to develop those skills in others, how do we bridge that?
That's the million-dollar question.
Knowing, doing gap.
Exactly.
What can companies actually do to help their leaders translate those principles into actual everyday behaviors?
Yeah, I mean, this survey suggests that maybe, all those traditional leadership development programs aren't as effective as we'd like to think.
Yeah.
Just providing the information, the frameworks,
like
the concept of deliberate leadership itself.
Right.
That doesn't automatically
boot leader
translate into change to behavior.
Yes.
There's a gap there.
It's like reading a book on how to play the piano.
You can learn all the theory.
Right.
But until you sit down and actually practice,
you can't play.
You can't play.
You're not going to develop the muscle memory,
right.
the artistry.
Exactly.
And that's what we're seeing in this data. It's like leaders understand the concepts,
right,
but they're not consistently putting them into practice.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to those really crucial interpersonal skills.
Yeah,
like giving regular feedback.
Rego feedback.
Setting individual goals for their team members.
Yeah.
Those are the things that seem to be falling by the wayside.
So how do we make leadership development more like piano practice?
Yeah.
And less like reading a textbook?
I think that's the challenge.
Yeah.
I think it requires a shift in focus from simply delivering information to actually supporting behavioral change.
So companies need to think beyond, just training programs.
Yeah, think bigger.
And think about how their systems and structures are either enabling or inhibiting
Right.
effective leadership.
Are we giving people opportunities to grow and develop at all levels?
Are we recognizing and rewarding good leadership?
Yeah.
Regardless of where they are in the hierarchy.
It's not just about the people at the top.
Exactly.
Right. It's about creating a culture where everyone feels empowered to step up.
And that brings us back to this feeling valued piece.
It does.
Right. When people feel valued by their organization, they're going to be more engaged.
More motivated.
More motivated.
More likely to step up.
More likely to exhibit those deliberate leadership behaviors.
Absolutely.
So it's not just about teaching people the skills. It's about creating an environment where they feel empowered to lead.
That's a great way to put it.
And that's a challenge.
It is.
That I think goes beyond Bulgaria.
Yeah, for sure.
It's something that every organization is dealing with.
Yeah, how do we create a culture
that fosters leadership, engagement, and ultimately success?
That's the big question.
This has been a really insightful deep dive.
It has.
Into leadership in Bulgaria.
Yeah, we covered a lot.
And I think it's sparked some important questions that apply far beyond, one country or one survey.
Absolutely.
So as you think about the future of leadership development,
the future of work,
it's clear that we need a shift.
We need a change.
We need to move away from just imparting knowledge and focus more on fostering behavioral change. We need to stop thinking about these isolated training events and think more holistically
about ongoing support,
ongoing development
that's embedded in the culture of the organization.
So to recap,
let's summarize
some key takeaways for our listeners. We learned about this concept of deliberate leadership.
Right.
And how it breaks down those core leadership skills.
3 categories.
Into 3 categories, personal, interpersonal, and action.
Right.
We then saw this really interesting finding. That Bulgarian managers, while strong in personal effectiveness and upholding company values, show a real drop-off.
A significant drop.
Yeah, it's a significant drop-off.
When it comes to engaging with and developing their teams.
Right, and that led us to this knowing-doing gap.
The gap.
This disconnect.
Between knowing and doing.
Between understanding the ideas and then actually putting them into practice.
Right.
We talk about surprising impact of hybrid work.
Yeah, that was a good one.
The importance of feeling valued.
Feeling valued, yes.
And the need to move beyond just leading by example.
Leading by example is not enough.
Not enough.
You got to do more.
And then finally, we touched on some potential solutions. Emphasizing that need for experiential learning,
hands-on,
personalized coaching,
and
creating a true culture of leadership within organizations.
It's a big challenge.
It is a big challenge.
I think it's an exciting one.
Yeah, we've only scratched the surface, but hopefully this has given our listeners plenty to think about.
Lots to ponder.
As they consider their own leadership journey. And the role that they play in creating a more thriving
and productive
work environment.
For everyone.
If you're interested in learning more about this study, we encourage you to check out the full Deliberate Leadership Survey, Bulgaria 2023-2024. You can find it online.
It's publicly available.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
See you next time.